It's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's hear from the Democrats' rising star, Jasmine Crockett. Here she declares she wants illegal immigrants in the country because who else is going to pick the cotton, y'all?
I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
So to be clear, she sees immigrants as some subservient class. Just in case you were wondering, she wants to import an underclass to do the work she considers beneath her. Now to leftist activist Kylie Brewer explaining common ways white people are racist.
Hi, my name's Kylie, and here are some things that white people say without realizing they're being racist. Number one, coming in hot, we have when a white person is telling a story and they mention the race of the person for no reason. That waitress, and then mention how she was Hispanic as if that somehow has something to do with her character.
Wait, what? So telling a story and mentioning the race of the people involved is racist, but only if white people do it. But if I'm telling a story as a woman of colour and mention, for example, a silly white girl called Kylie delivering daft lectures about racism, that's perfectly okay. Let's get some more wisdom about racism from Kylie.
Number two, telling a story about someone from a different race and then doing an accent to make the story come to life. Number three, saying the N-word in rap music or other songs because it's going too fast to skip it.
One, doing accents is awesome and funny. And if you like rap songs and sing the lyrics that the artist has written, that does not make you racist. I mean, come on. Now, this next guy shows how you deal with these lefties. He encounters a woman in traffic in a Make America Gay Again cap. Hilarity ensues.
I like your MAGA hat. Yeah, Trump. Woo!
It says gay.
Oh, I know.
Just checking.
Trump fan.
Never know.
Trump?
No. It says make America gay again.
Great again.
Gay.
I know, but we love Trump, right?
That is just so amusing. Now, here's alleged comic John Oliver, one of the unfunniest nincompoops to ever call himself a comedian. Here he goes on some bizarre rant arguing that males really don't have an advantage in sport. I don't know why you even have men and women's categories then, John.
Bigger and stronger bodies are not automatically advantaged in every scenario. But the degree of difference here matters because we expect a certain amount of difference in athletics. Taller basketball players are expected to compete against shorter ones. Faster soccer players compete against slower ones. Michael Phelps was allowed to compete with other swimmers despite being part dolphin. And crucially, none of the studies I've mentioned so far bear much relevance to what these new laws target, which is youth sports, usually of all ages. And the research there is even more scant. We have no research about how being trans or undergoing gender-affirming treatment impacts athletic performance in teens.
Yes, he really is that stupid and pathetic. A sad, well, sounds like a laugh track accompanying lies, half-truths and gaslighting masquerading as comedy. Pathetic, but if you think that was the worst of it, well, brace yourself, because when this lefty loses it, he really loses it. Here he claims it's not the women being injured we should care about, it's the trans activists who are having their feelings hurt.
Just to be clear, I'm not happy to watch women experience injury, humiliation and a loss of sporting opportunities. But that includes trans women and kids, and they seem to be getting hurt the most right now.
Yeah, but they're not getting injured though, are they, John? And funny, if there is no physical advantage, then why are we not seeing a whole bunch of women identifying as men competing in men's competition? If you think there is no difference between the sexes, then let me read out this one stat that brings it home even for the biggest simpleton among us, and I'm talking to you, John Oliver. The fastest female sprinter in the world is American runner Allyson Felix, a woman with more gold medals than Usain Bolt, Her lifetime best for the 400 metres is 49.26 seconds. Based on 2018 data, nearly 300 high school boys in the US alone could beat it. Now, that was from back in 2021, and I can tell you the sexes haven't changed that much since then. You know, even a broken clock is right twice a day, and even CNN occasionally allows truth and data to intrude on its 24/7 anti-Trump hysteria.
I think there was this concern among some folks that Donald Trump would come in for a second term and kind of be a lame duck. He ain't no lame duck. If anything, he's a soaring eagle. What am I talking about here? Let's talk about Trump executive orders in 2025. He's already signed 111 so far. That is the most at this point in a presidency in at least 100 years. In fact, it's the most in any single year, and we're only in April.
Oh, wow. The teeny tiny CNN audience doesn't want to hear that. The hosts don't want to hear it either. So naturally, the question had to be asked, does Trump have too much power with all those executive orders? Surely a big majority of Americans are worried about that. Turns out they're not, though.
Take it a step further. Do the people think he has too much? He's taken too much power.
Yeah, this I think is the real question, right? You can believe that he's doing stuff completely differently, but do you think that he has a little too much power or not? And this is interesting. So Trump's presidential power is too much, the right amount, too little. Well, 47% say too much, but then you get 36% who say the right amount. Then you get 17% who say too little. So you're essentially dealing with a majority of the American public, 53%, who do not say that Trump has too much power. They either says he has too little power or the right amount of power. So the idea, that argument that Donald Trump is, quote unquote, a king, that I don't think holds with the American people. It does hold maybe with 47%, but with the majority of folks, they believe Donald Trump's doing something completely differently, and they don't believe he has too much power, and the executive orders he signed certainly suggest he's no lame duck. He is, as I said at the beginning, a soaring eagle.
53 to 47%. Funny how that works. Now, let's talk about Bill Burr, the once funny Bill Burr, who has gone from being hilarious to being a hysteric and is now backing away from his newly acquired lefty views. It was only a couple of weeks ago where he was railing against corporates and saying to a free murderer, Luigi Mangione.
You know what I mean? Because some corporate had to give himself a bonus check at the end of the year. What if we made it worse? But made it look the same?
Yeah.
Then could our pools be bigger?
Not
Free
okay.
Luigi!
But showing all the courage and consistency of a typical celebrity, Burr is now backing away from that sort of position. Despite going on The View and railing against Donald Trump and Elon Musk, he now says he's not political.
No, I'm not going to just have some controversial moment so you can get clicks. I'm not doing that. I mean, I'm here for Conan. I'm not doing all of this. What are you going to bring up next? The Middle East? I went to summer school 3 out of 4 years in high school. I'm not qualified to talk about this.
I was just
What do you think about global warming?
You said about Elon that he was ruining Earth, I saw on The View. You're critical of him. What do you think of all the boycotts, like even the violence
I don't watch the news. I don't watch the news. I have no idea what's going on. I watch Instagram. I watch people wipe out on motorcycles. I watch lions and hyenas fight each other. This is the things that I do. And I don't think you should be asking a comedian.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't know anything about politics. He's not political, but he chose to go on The View and rail against the Trump agenda. Well done. Now, if you want to see real racism, then watch this. And sadly, it's not just this woman. More than $250,000 has been raised for this killer, Carmelo Anthony, who murdered an innocent, unarmed teenager. His name's Austin Metcalf, at a track event. Watch this woman justify Austin's murder. This is utterly sick.
Y'all not gonna make me believe or feel any kind of sympathy for Austin Metcalf at all. He put his hands on that young man when he should have kept them hands to himself. When the young man told him, touch me and see, you bet not touch me, that meant that I don't want you in my space, I don't want you touching me. Rosa Parks days is over. You cannot think that you can move somebody out of a seat that you don't own and think that it's going to be okay. And you can't determine how I'm going to retaliate on you when you put your hands on me in an aggressive manner. Austin Metcalf got exactly what he deserved.
Let's bring in journalist and filmmaker Ami Horowitz. Ami, that is just utterly sick. That poor kid was murdered at a sporting event. He died in his twin brother's arms after being stabbed to death. And people are raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for his killer.
Yeah. Poor Carmelo Anthony. And I'm not talking about the Carmelo Anthony who stabbed that student to death. I'm talking about NBA offensive legend and defensive liability, Carmelo Anthony, who was recently elected to the Hall of Fame. But if you look up Carmelo Anthony, all you get is the other guy whose family was a big enough fan of Melo's to name him after the NBA legend with a weird enough name, but not weird enough for them. They had to change the name from Carmelo with a C to Carmelo with a K. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the pathology of the left to raise money for this kid. But that's, Rita, that's in line with the normalization and defense of violence that we've seen from the left over the last few years, right? I mean, the Mangione also raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for his defense after he murdered a healthcare executive, or people going out and defending the left who have been burning down Tesla dealerships and burning Tesla cars. This is what we're finding from the left. This is unfortunately not abnormal, but it is sick. It is disgusting.
Now, I've played in Lefties this week footage of these protests across the country and how old many of the participants appear to be. Gen Z seems to have better things to do.
Where the is Gen Z? These people are cheering. They're talking like it's just the 60s.
Well, yeah, that's a Gen Z who did show up and was wondering where the other young people were. Where are they, Arby? Why are so many of these protests seem to be full of older Americans?
Yeah, by the way, I'm assuming you say Gen Z. That means Gen Z? I don't know. I don't speak Australian. I speak American.
It's the English language, Army, please.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, so look, let me push back a little bit in the sense that there's no question that Gen Z is the most supportive of the Palestinians of all the generations, right? A majority, a clear majority of Gen Z support the Palestinians over the Israelis. A first time we've had that flip. In fact, almost a quarter, actually more than a quarter of Gen Z feel that the war against Hamas is not justified, a 50% increase than the rest of the population in the United States. So they are supportive of the Palestinian cause. But why are they not out there as much as older people is an interesting question. And we don't really have an answer. I can posit a couple of theories that I have. So first of all, with Gen Z, there is a significant gender gap. So there are, if you go out there, the younger people you do see out there are all female. None of them are male, which kind of comports with what's happening with Gen Z politically, generally, where there is a split politically, and you see Gen Z men, Gen Z boys, men, are actually a majority of them for the first time. In fact, since 36 years, have moved decisively to the Republican side of the ledger. I'll also give you this theory that I came up with, is that Gen Z was born or came to work, right? Came to adulthood in a time of great job uncertainty, that they hit the job market when COVID hit, right? They're in the job market when inflation, unemployment were out of control under Joe Biden. I think they feel a lot of uncertainty with their job security and don't feel comfortable going out and protesting when they've got better things to do, like work and try to make a living.
Absolutely. And I was talking there about the anti-Trump protests across the country. Interesting that you thought I was talking about the anti-Israel protests, because I think that it's pretty much the same crowd of people. So with that particular girl, obviously she had the keffiyeh.
Circle.
It's the one circle, exactly. The same ones we see every single time, the Pussy Hat Brigade, the BLM marches, it's the same crowd. Now let's talk about the Middle East. The keffiyeh is, it's becoming a common occurrence at these left-wing protests, whether they're for the environment or whether they're for Middle East politics. Now, President Trump has said that US and Iran will hold direct talks later this week, Army. Where are these negotiations for a new nuclear deal? Is Iran hopeful of getting one? Because if they don't come to the negotiating table, things could get ugly with what Israel and America have been talking about.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And of course, he talked about that while Netanyahu was sitting next to him. And Netanyahu, unlike Zelensky, certainly didn't make the mistake of pushing back against President Trump, certainly not there in public. But I think there are a number of very significant differences between what these talks might look like and the talks that Obama had before. First of all, I'll give you a quick story that when the negotiations with Obama were being done with the Iranians, I was in Vienna during those talks. And first of all, I want to let you know that the U.S. and Iran negotiators were at the most expensive hotel in Vienna that cost over $1,000 a night. I thought that was kind of interesting as taxpayer dollars. I stayed at the Marriott across the street that was less than 1/3 of that price, but they chose not to stay there with me. And I spent a weekend speaking with the Iranian and U.S. nuclear negotiators, and over drinks with the U.S. negotiators, I found it fascinating, and this is kind of the crux of the problem here, is that they were in la-la land. When we were having a frank talk about Iran pursuing a nuclear weapon, they looked at me and they said, "We're experts in this. You're a no one, and we don't know that Iran has made a decision to pursue a nuclear weapon. How do you know that?" I was looking at them saying, is the sky blue? Are you really that out of it that you're negotiating with the Iranians and you're not even sure they're pursuing a weapon? That's first of all. Second of all, so I trust the U.S. Trump negotiators, certainly way more than the Obama negotiators. These are the same people who brought to you the Abraham Accords. So they have a track record of success. But also, I think that this negotiation is also giving a certain amount of cover that if negotiations don't end well, that I believe there's a credible threat of violence. And that may come from the United States attacking Iran, but rather giving Israel the green light to do so. Having said, we negotiated. We went to the table with good faith. They rejected it. So I think that's also part of the play here. I'll also note that Netanyahu is the second time he sat in the Oval Office with the president who announced negotiations with the Iranians. This time, he was told in advance of this, from the beginning, before they began, as part of the process, a silent partner, if you will, as opposed to 2013, when he sat there and Obama announced it, totally blindsiding Netanyahu, which only found out then that they had 5 months of secret negotiations without Israeli input. So these are two very, very different things. I certainly trust the Trump team way more than Biden or Obama on negotiating with the Iranians.
Well, one thing you can say about the Trump team, they're not going into these negotiations being dangerously naive. And the Obama team, from what you've said and what others have observed, they were just completely played, Army. They were completely played, and it shows. They gave Iran a very, very advantageous deal. And we know Iran is the chief sponsor of Hamas, Hezbollah, all sorts of mayhem caused because of the Iranian regime beyond Iran's borders. Army Horowitz, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for your time tonight. Joining me now is American Culture Project Senior Fellow and School Choice Advocate Corey DeAngelis. Corey, let's start in the once great state of Colorado, which in the lead up to the 2024 election tried to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. Talk about threats to democracy. Well, the mad Colorado Democrats are at it again. Let's hear from Republican Jarvis Caldwell explain what's happening.
And what they want to do with this bill is say that if they confuse your children and you don't affirm that confusion, they will take your child from you. That bill passed the House of Representatives on party lines today. It's now going to the Senate. So you need to reach out to your senators. You need to reach out to the governor of Colorado and let them know that you're not okay with this.
So, Corey, let me get this straight. House Democrats have passed a bill that classifies misgendering your own child as child abuse.
Yeah, exactly right. It's straight out of 1984. It's Orwellian. The Colorado Democrats have just lost their minds. And now you have the inmates running the asylum. They pushed through this bill, and they also voted to invoke something called Rule 16, which silences all debate from dissent. So they just rammed this through. They know it's an unpopular issue for them. They didn't want viral clips to go around of them trying to defend this defenseless position. They basically think they own your kids. They even have one Democrat from Colorado in committee on this same bill, a representative, compared parent groups to the KKK and called them hate groups. This just shows you they don't respect parental rights. And I hope they lose some seats on this issue because they've gone so far left. It's basically socialist takeover of parents, and parents aren't going to stand for it.
It is crazy. So you could have a little, I don't know, 9-year-old come to you and say, I want to be a boy. And if you don't respect that choice and you misgender that child and call a girl who's a girl, then that is classified as child abuse. I mean, I just don't know how this is going to work. It'll be interesting to see what Pam Bondi makes of this. Here is the Attorney General explaining that the state of Maine will face the consequences of allowing men in women's prison, and those consequences are going to be costly.
We pulled all non-essential funding from the Department of Corrections in Maine because they were allowing a man in a woman's prison, a giant 6'1", 245-pound guy who committed a double murder with a knife, stabbed his parents to death and the family dog, and he identified as a woman. So they were letting him be housed in a female prison. No longer. We will pull your funding. We will protect women in prison. We will protect women in sports. We will protect women throughout this country. No more of that.
It may seem crazy that that could be happening in a civilised country, but Corey, you may be interested to know it's happening right here where I am in Victoria, in Australia. We've got a sexual predator with a male body that identifies as female in our biggest women's prison right here in Melbourne. This madness has to stop, and it's good to see Pam Bondi take a stand.
Yeah, I'm thankful for her leadership. I'm thankful for the leadership from President Trump. He ran on parental rights. He ran on there only being two genders, male and female. He ran on reality, not on insanity. And he's leading the way. And you think Maine is bad? You think places like California are bad when it comes to the socialist takeover? Colorado politicians are basically saying, hold my beer. We're going to try to one-up you. They passed that bill on a Sunday. They also rammed through taxpayer-funded abortions and some other bills as well that are just totally indefensible. And they got to lose seats over this. I mean, the boys playing in girls sports issue, that is an 80-20 issue. People want to understand real biology and to respect women's sports. But the Democrats here in the U.S. and the Senate, they all voted against protecting women's sports just a couple weeks ago. They've gone totally Looney Tunes.
They have, and they keep doubling down on this 80-20 issue. In fact, I reckon it's probably 90-10. I think there's the rest of those who pretend to be on side with the radical gender ideologues, I think are just doing it to, I don't know, to seem like they're progressive or to be backing their side. When it really comes to the crunch, they don't believe that you can change genders. Now, Corey, I played some footage last week of a university lecturer overturning a table set up by college Republicans at the University of Wisconsin, I think it was. Tell me what happened there. The chair of the English department at that university has been placed on administrative leave, we understand. Has he made admissions or apologies for what happened there?
I haven't seen anything since he's been put on administrative leave. He basically is hiding under a rock at this point. But look at this. I mean, these are the people who are trying to educate young adults at school. I actually looked up at this guy. He is the chair of the English department. He has been put on administrative leave after throwing a temper tantrum because those students were the college Republicans tabling for the Republicans who were running for office that day. He did this on an election day. That's a threat to democracy if I ever saw one. He's interfering with elections. And he also is a big proponent of critical race theory. This is the obvious result of these kind of Marxist ideologies where they tell you that your opponents that disagree with you are evil, and so they resort to violence all too often. It's part of their ideology, and it's why we need to root this dangerous ideology out of schools at the K through 12 level and also the colleges. And Trump has ran on defunding DEI initiatives. They're already starting to do it, and he's also started to pull funding from different universities. And so that's a good first step. This University of Wisconsin needs to clean up their act too and not have professors like this running the show.
Well, let's have a look at another university and how the lefties behave there. This is UC Davis, University of California, Davis. Last week, they attacked and destroyed a Turning Point USA display and also attacked conservative students.
Come on, please, get in there. Get in there.
Corey, as you saw there in that footage, the police just stood around watching the display being destroyed and students being attacked. Is that a fairly common occurrence on university campuses?
I mean, those Antifa dorks must have been educated in government schools where they learn critical race theory ideas that everyone that they disagree with must be evil people that they have to engage in violence with. I mean, that's part of the story here. But yes, the security or police officers weren't doing a dang thing to protect the Turning Point USA students. Either those officers were told to stand down, or they disagreed with the Turning Point USA students, or maybe they're just protected by a union that's protects the least common denominator. You see the same kind of issues with the teachers unions in the public school system. Maybe there's a similar problem with the government police officers that aren't facing accountability. I mean, these guys should be held accountable. They're caught on camera not doing their job. I mean, there's got to be some accountability. I respect police, especially when they're doing a good job. They keep our communities safe. But when you have evidence of something like this happen, where they're just not doing a bunch of anything, you got to draw the line somewhere, and they need to do a better job.
You've said it well there, Corey DeAngelis. Thanks for your time tonight.